Welcome to Your Family's Health, the program that focuses on healthcare issues with unique and different modalities for taking charge of your health today. Experts talk weekly with our continuing roster of guests from around the country and right here in Nassau County to keep you up to date on the latest health issues and trends. Take care of your mind, body, and soul. Spend the next half hour with the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC, and get on the journey to better health.
Hello and welcome to Your Family's Health. My name is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard from the Nursing Department here at Nassau Community College. Today is a very special edition of Your Family's Health. It's been 20 years since the untimely death of actor and comedian John Ritter. John's career spanned decades, most notably his starring roles in the classic TV sitcom Three's Company and many movies including Bad Santa and Problem Child 1 and 2. John passed away with what was ultimately diagnosed as aortic dissection, a life-threatening condition in which a tear occurs in the inner layer of the aorta. I am so honored to welcome as my guest today, John Ritter's wife, Amy Yasbeck, an actress and the founder of the John Ritter Foundation for Aortic Health. Also joining us is Dr. Dianna Milewicz, President George H.W. Chair of the Cardiovascular Medicine, Director of the Division of Medical Genetics, and Vice Chair of the Department of Internal Medicine at the University of Texas Health Science Center at Houston McGovern Medical School. Together, they are here to discuss aortic dissection and the vital work that John Ritter Foundation does, which was created by Amy in his honor. Amy and Dr. Milewicz, welcome to Your Family's Health on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you, Doctor. We're happy to be here at Nassau Community College. Can I add one thing to
Sure.
Dr. Milewicz's amazingly long introduction? She also is the director of the John Ritter Research Program in Aortic and Vascular Diseases. And what do we say, Diana? That is at the Texas Medical Center. What is the story on that?
Well, it's at UT Health in Houston, and that's part of the Texas Medical Center.
My foundation is across the country. Obviously, it's for everybody in the nation and everybody in the world, but we have people working with us and for us and around us and to our benefit in so many places all around the country that it's interesting to say something is in Houston because that's where the work is being done. The genetic work is being done, and we love to fund Dr. Milewicz, and we do, but her work provides information, life-saving information for really everybody worldwide. And that's the end of talking about her. Let's talk about me for a minute.
Okay. So Amy, I just have a question for you, Amy. I feel like I've waited 20 years to be able to say how sorry I am on behalf of all of us here at WHPC about this tragedy. So before we get into what happened, can you tell us more about John Ritter? I remember this sitcom as a younger person. I'm not going to say as a child because I'm kind of older, but I couldn't wait. I couldn't wait to see, it was an amazing television sitcom. And, can you just tell me about this issue, this tragedy that happened?
So John was working on a show in Burbank. He had really sudden kind of onset of chest pains and nausea and was taken to an emergency room really right across the street from the studio where he was working. And sadly, on that night, which a friend of ours, Dr. Estrella, would call the pre-John Ritter awareness, on that night, the last night of pre-John Ritter awareness, they did not think anything except for a heart attack, because that is the most common, maybe, or the most dire. And so they began treating him for a heart attack, which sadly, it wasn't a block in his heart. He was dying from a tear in the lining of his aorta. And so all of the things they did for him to alleviate the symptoms of the heart attack and prepare him for the stuff they were going to do led to, delayed treatment, actually no treatment in his case. And he passed away from an aortic dissection, and he had a big aneurysm in his ascending thoracic aorta, which, because it's asymptomatic mostly. Dr. Milewicz, do people ever feel when they have an aneurysm, that ballooning?
The vast majority of people don't feel anything. And like you said, they're
Right.
totally asymptomatic. People don't know they have this enlargement of their aorta going on.
Yeah, I wanted to ask Dr. Milewicz, what is an aortic dissection, and how does it differ from a heart attack or vascular conditions?
Okay, first of all, it's not affecting the heart. It's affecting that major artery that comes out of the heart, the aorta that you already mentioned. And what happens first is the aorta starts enlarging or ballooning up. And like Amy said, that is in most people, the vast majority of people, that's totally asymptomatic. They don't know it's slowly growing.
It can be happening for years. I mean, different people, It happens where it can become aneurysmal very quickly. But also, do you think it can probably be found if you have an echo or something?
Yeah, it can be picked up incidentally when you have imaging for something else. But so it gets bigger and bigger and it becomes unstable. And that leads to an acute aortic dissection. And that's where the blood, instead of staying inside the aorta in the lumen, it breaks into the wall and starts tearing the wall apart. Right. And Amy always talks about it being like a run in the stockings. Nobody wears stockings.
No, you know what my new favorite analogy is, Dr. Milewicz? Because especially when we're on this coast, when you get a hand-me-down winter jacket, because I'm the youngest of 5, and you start to put your arm through it and you accidentally put it into the lining instead. So you push your hand through and your hand doesn't come out.
That's a good analogy.
And that is well, yeah, right, because it's inside of it. And I know very rarely, I mean, Dr. Milewicz told me this, I don't know if there's new info on this, it will rupture all the way through to the outside, but it doesn't need to be absolutely deadly, because the lumen that she mentioned, the main thoroughfare where it's supposed to be going, if you get that little tear and that little tributary starts developing, and then the blood gets diverted to places and it doesn't go to where it needs to go. It's a very scary thing, and it's very time sensitive. And, once that dissection happens, and I think what is it, Dr. Milewicz? A CT scan is like the ultimate, the gold standard, right? Like in an emergency setting.
Dr. Milewicz, before we go there, what causes this? Yeah. What is the main reason for this occurring in most patients? Yeah. And who is at risk?
So the main risk factors for this condition are hypertension, or the presence of a bicuspid aortic valve, which is a congenital heart defect, and genetic changes in our DNA. Mm-hmm. So it can be passed from one generation to the next in families, and that happens in about 1 out of 5 individuals that have the disease. So there's a very strong genetic component to this particular condition. And that was the case for John. Yeah. After his death, we went and checked the family members to see if anybody had one of these asymptomatic aneurysms. And it turned out that his brother Tommy did have an aneurysm.
Okay.
Yeah, he went older by 1 year, Tommy had an aneurysm in the exact same place as John's was, ascending, right? Mm-hmm. And we actually had to crack down, because there were some people saying, no, it's too small to operate. And we're thinking, well, we don't know how fast John's grew. Right. We don't know. So got him to the right place. And the lovely Dr. Craig Miller at Stanford treated him, replaced his aortic arch, and Tommy lives to tell the story. And our whole family is imaged with echocardiogram once a year. Mm-hmm. We don't know who's in or who's out, because our gene variation or mutation is not named. It hasn't been pinned down yet. Everybody's working on it. Everybody's working on it for everybody. And we're very lucky to know, well, Dianna knows many families that I personally know, 2 families who have had their, the gene that's been causing all this trauma in their family for generations and generations named, and they're able to have it pinpointed. They know how to check everybody in the family, whether they're in or out. And if it's somebody is ruled in, I mean, Dr. Milewicz, please speak about this. You are the boss of this.
Yeah. No, what I wanted to ask you, Doctor, is, and then I'll ask Amy also, is were there symptoms that you can tell us that is readily noticeable in someone with this condition? And Amy, did you see these symptoms in John?
There's no symptoms, as we were saying, for the aneurysm. So somebody's body could be set up from before they were born genetically to have this kind of misspelling of their genetic code that eventually their aortic, the proteins that make up the tissue in their aorta, is going to have a fault in it at some point. But there's no way to know that unless you know what gene you're looking for. So, and then there's the aneurysm, which is, like Dr. Milewicz said, asymptomatic for 99 point whatever amount of people. But the aortic dissection feels a certain way for people. And it is a little bit different for people. John felt it a lot in his back, but it's kind of an early, like sudden onset chest pain. So you see why a doctor might, chest pain. Yes. But there can be other symptoms too. And what Dr. Milewicz has done is helped us develop Ritter rules. And the Ritter rules are some very kind of easily digestible for lay people and everybody, that talks about what it feels like, who's at risk, what's the best imaging modalities once you get there. Because sometimes you have to be in charge of your own thing. Yeah. If you go in there and they're like, oh, ma'am, you're just having your period, or it's just gas or whatever, you're like, you know what? Check me for that John Ritter thing. And what the American Heart Association has done so well is explain to people how to do that for heart attacks and also for breast cancer. Say, this may be breast cancer. My mom had it or my sister had it. We need to get the world understanding that is the kind of genetic risk that can also happen with this condition as well, and get people speaking up even in the emergency room and to their doctors and telling them about family history and saying, hey, why don't you go on johnritterfoundation.org? Yes. We have it.
And I think this is why this is so important. It's very important. Yeah. Looking back, is there something, and this is both directed to both of you, how can we prevent this from happening? Looking back and seeing what we have done, what could we do better? How can we prevent this from?
What we've done for John?
Yes, to prevent aortic dissection. How can we prevent this from happening?
So that's the thing that's the issue that the John Ritter Foundation is trying to address. No one needs to die of an acute aortic dissection. If we know who's at risk in the general population, we can go in, diagnose the aneurysm, follow it, but then go in and surgically repair the aneurysm, and that completely prevents the dissection. Okay. So one thing we can do is make sure everybody knows that if there's a dissection in your family, that's a red flag that other people may be at risk, and they need to talk to their doctor about getting the imaging that Amy talked about. And that imaging saves people's saves lives, because, as I said, we can go in and repair the aneurysm and prevent those deadly dissections. And what we're trying to do through the research is find all the genetic triggers for acute aortic dissection. Because once we have those, we can go through the population and begin to identify who's at risk and put them on protocols to prevent that. Right. We don't have to be dependent on a family history. So that's the goal, and I'm hoping in 10 years or sooner, if possible, that we have no more deaths due to dissections.
At the rate you are going there, Dianna, at the rate you are working, and around the world people are working, and one of the things that's really important to me, and most people play ball with this, and some facilities don't, but is that the information is shared. So Dr. Milewicz's research is shared with people who are doing other research, so that it's not being redundant, somebody doing the same thing, or you're waiting for this result in your lab and somebody else who you trust has gotten it, so you can,
Right.
and that's the kind of thing that brings it forward. Nobody should be jealously guarding their research. This is how, during the AIDS epidemic, everybody just kind of, all of the research centers put their walls down and said, this is an emergency. And it just happened. And you know what? This is an emergency. This is something that has been misidentified, ignored for a long time, because from the doctors that I've spoken to who've been around a long time, like, yeah, they're scared to death of this happening, but somehow not scared enough to put it on the diagnostic differential when somebody comes in the emergency room. But it's changing. And like Dr. Estrella says, there's the pre-John Ritter and the post-John Ritter. John died in the last moments of pre-John Ritter. And then after that, I mean, Dr. Milewicz and I just kind of took up the banner. You know, she was already doing her thing and finding, Dr. Milewicz, had you already, when John passed away, had you already published about ACTA 2?
Not yet. That came about 10 years later.
It did? So
yes,
what was there?
How long you've been doing this, Amy?
20, you're right. God, that's so crazy. Oh, you're right. Because then and so, but the people that this is their mission are so all in, and all around the world, you kind of give each other that nod, like, yeah, we know, because it's rare enough to be considered rare, but we know that it's not actually that rare. Certainly not when, like our CEO, you're the 5th dissection in 4 generations. If it's in your family, it's in your family. And more, I think, I mean, Dr. Milewicz, please, you know this so much better than I do, but because there's so many now different, people are getting scanned more. Yeah. And so it's found kind of incidentally or accidentally sometimes too. So, and it's not that there are, just like a lot of things in the world, it's like, why are there so many this and so many that? And it's like, it's not, we just know them now. So we're finding so many more things that in the old days, probably John and Tom's dad died of an aortic dissection. And Dr. Milewicz was the first one to point that out. He was a singing cowboy named Tex Ritter, and he was absolutely wonderful. And he passed away of what they just called a massive heart attack. He was actually bailing one of his band members out of jail in Nashville. And he passed away, and Tommy was there when Tex died, but he just had a chest pain, grabbed his chest, and died. No autopsy. And so many of those in the past, and still, this is why Dr. Milewicz has lots of hopes and dreams and pushing towards coroners and MEs coming over to our side. But it would be put into the cardiac category. So I don't think even now we know exactly how many people die of a thoracic, that acute thoracic aortic dissection. Even today. But certainly had we known that about Tex Ritter, then we'd be looking for it in John and Tommy. So you don't want to have somebody find out the hard way like our family did. It's so much better, which we do see now. We find people are diagnosed with an aneurysm and they go to the John Ritter Foundation and we send them to Dr. Milewicz. And if they are good and wonderful people, they will participate in research, which helps not only their families, but the world. And for generations, their family can be safe. Once somebody gets it in their head, and you hate that it has to be something bad happens to you, like in our family. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
That it has to come from trauma, but boy, does it stick when it does, And because so many people loved John, because they could tell just his personality, like you were saying, doctor, kind of came through the TV, like a wonderful guy.
Yes.
They felt like they knew him, so they felt a kind of impact, maybe trauma from a quote-unquote celebrity dying that they hadn't really maybe feel if there's somebody from a black and white movie that they hardly knew anything about them in life. And it really pushed people to want to understand this. And I jumped on that. And it's what John would have wanted. I know that. So thank you so much for being interested in this and helping us spread the word.
Yeah, this foundation is awesome. You're listening to Your Family's Health on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard, and today you're learning about aortic dissection, a life-threatening condition in which a tear occurs in the inner layer of the aorta. This is what caused the death of actor John Ritter, known best from the sitcom Three's Company. My guests today are John Ritter's wife, actress Amy Yasbeck, who is the founder of the John Ritter Foundation for Aortic Health, and Dr. Dianna Milewicz, President George H.W. Bush Chair of Cardiovascular Medicine, Director of the Division of Medical Genetics, and Vice Chair of the Department of Internal Medicine at the University of Texas Health Science Center at Houston McGovern Medical School. So my next question is, this foundation, awesome work. Do you collaborate with healthcare professionals, researchers? I'm hearing a lot of research. And institutions to advance aortic health knowledge and care?
Absolutely. We have a pretty amazing professional advisory board, and we have our own chief science officer, Ellen Hostetler, to keep us on the straight and narrow. I used to have to, in the old days, before I had this amazing staff, I would answer phone calls from people, and I can't tell them medical stuff, and I would send them, and I'd say, did I say the right thing? Did I do it? And it was... So now we have so much support and so much backup that we are really kind of cutting edge, and we're educating each other through the years. And in our effort, our mission actually to educate the public and medical community alike, we have on our website the Aorta Academy. And at first I was like, well, I don't know if it's an academy. Guess what? It is. You can learn everything you've ever wanted to know about aortas, but we're afraid to ask. Remember that book, Diana? That wasn't about. That wasn't aortas. But wonderful. And we have symposiums, and they're all online. You can watch them. Our professional advisory board and others contribute to that. It's wonderful. And it's curated by our chief science officer, Ms. Hostetler. And another thing it's always needed, I think, in any community, but especially ours because it's quote unquote rare. And your doctor might say, I don't know, I've never seen one of these before, which you don't want to hear that, right? Is we have aorta advocates. So we have a group of people who are affected by aortic dissection, whether it's a family member or they've had aortic dissection, to be able to guide them to start their journey at the John Ritter Foundation, because we do get you anywhere you need to go, but to be able to have peer-to-peer support,
That's
or
wonderful.
I'm calling aorta to aorta.
Yeah. That's good.
Because you might even feel a little bit separated from your family, or when you hear it's genetic, you're like, there's all those. And we can get you to where you need to be. And these are not people who are giving medical advice. They're people it's like, I hear you, I've been there, and they really listen to your story, and they're trained to understand how to give you the resources without overstepping, because it is a personal experience.
So this advocacy, is this on a one-on-one? This is I can access. Excellent. Yep. And I can access this on the website? Is this on a website that I can access?
You can.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm hearing that
if you run across anybody, you have to, if you run across anybody who needs us, and even people who don't know anything about it, you can go there to learn. You can go there to look at some pretty pictures of John Ritter, whatever you need. But JohnRitterFoundation.org. Come and knock on our door. You remember that from the old show?
Yes, I love that song. Yeah. I'm hearing that you're raising money in New York City Marathon. How is that going with the campaigns?
Yeah, every year we have runners in the New York City Marathon. We're one of the official charities. And we have, up to 20 people or so running to raise money. And we also have events in New York and LA, Evening from the Heart. And you can also, because of course, all of this takes money to do, but we want to make people understand that we're very happy for you to write us a big fat old check, but also you might want to come check out our John Ritter Foundation swag. We have a John Ritter Foundation store.
Really?
And then we have auctions. Yes. And then we have auctions several times a year. There's always something going.
So where's the store?
Where it's like a signed memorabilia. The store is in the cloud.
Okay.
Online.
Okay.
Nobody has a store anymore.
No.
Yeah, so it's on the website.
Okay.
It's on the website, and all that
That's
money,
nice.
all the profits from that goes directly towards our mission of raising awareness and funding research and just general education. Because once, you know how they say, if you know, you know?
Yes.
If you know, you know. If you don't, you're screwed.
If you had to leave our listeners with one thing when it comes down to aortic dissection, what would you say?
I would say that if somebody in your family has a thoracic aortic aneurysm or it has had a dissection, you need to talk to your doctor about your risk.
And Amy?
She took my answer.
Oh, no. Well, you can always sing.
Here's what I say. I cannot. My union rep will smack me. I would say for people who knew John and felt like they knew him, that they actually did. And if people say, I loved John, and I'll say, he loved you too. He understood that the people out there are what made him. You can't just be an actor sitting there by yourself, right? And that if they can do something for John, they can go commit random acts of silliness, but then pull their crap together, understand about aortic dissection, and spread the word wide.
Well, this was a wonderful opportunity and wonderful work that you're doing. Thank you for being here, Amy Yasbeck, the wife of the beloved actor and comedian John Ritter, and actress herself, and the founder of the John Ritter Foundation, and Dr. Dianna Milewicz, President George H.W. Bush, Chair of the Cardiovascular Medicine, Director of the Division of Medical Genetics, and Vice Chair of the Department of Internal Medicine at the University of Texas Health Science Center at Houston McGovern Medical School. We thank you for giving us all this important information. And Amy, once again, we're sorry for the loss of your husband.
Thank you.
This is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard from the Nursing Department here at Nassau Community College, and we want to thank you for listening to this week's edition of Your Family's Health.
We'd like to get your feedback on your family's health. Send your comments by emailing them to whpc@ncc.edu. Podcasts of today's show are available on iTunes, Android Podcasts, and Spreaker. This program was produced at the studios of Nassau Community College in cooperation with the Nursing Department. Join us next week for another edition of Your Family's Health on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.